Hello, we are having streaming issues again. It is very windy, so we're thinking that's the problem. We rebooted the router last week. It's got Robin all stressed out. But I have a funny story to tell relating to this. So back in the day when we had antennas on our TVs, or the old analog TVs, I guess they're called, the tube TVs. Anyway, on Sunday afternoon, my dad would be watching TV, relaxing after having been preaching, and my mom would be making lunch, and she would mash the potatoes. She had one of those hand mixers, and she would start mashing the potatoes. Actually, it sounds more like a dentist drill than a hand mixer, but I don't do hand mixers. I can do an imitation of a dentist drill. So my mother made mashed potatoes with the dentist drill. Let's just make the story like that. So she's making the potatoes, and it made the TV all staticky. And, you know, she'd be mashing and mashing and mashing. And then finally my dad would go, "Hey, hon." And she'd go, "What?" "And how much longer till those potatoes are done?" "Just another minute." I mean, every Sunday, because we always had like a big Sunday lunch, you know. And so that was a thing. So we are having that thing, although I'm not making mashed potatoes. We are having a lot of wind, and it seems to be interfering with our feed.
And the stream was perfectly fine up until just before we were to go live.
So it's the devil that's doing it. So the devil made it do it,
You think so?
reference your sermon from last week. So if you want to know what that was about, you can look at Quartz Hill Community Church's Facebook page or YouTube channel and watch the message from last week. So it was about the devil made me do it, and he talked about Flip Wilson and all that, which is another thing from back in the day with tube TVs. So here we are today. We will not be here next Saturday, but we'll pick up again the following Saturday. And that topic's going to be what about purgatory? But today we're talking about what about heaven? And so if you can stand the halting video, I hope you'll hang with us and discuss heaven with us. So Steve is here, and he said hello. Haven't seen Dennis yet. Sometimes he pops in.
It's very late in Sweden.
Yes. Yeah. If he's still awake, he joins us. But anyway, so Facebook is steadier, although nothing's steady right now, but Facebook seems to be a lot steadier than YouTube. So if you're tuning in on YouTube, you might want to switch over to A Mirror Darkly there, because when it is working, it's more stable on Facebook. So anyway, with that, we'll get started. This is Robin, and I'm Ruth, and this is A Mirror Darkly Unbridled Inquiry.
Yes.
Oh, and we run the show in 10-minute segments, so I will start our first 10-minute segment. So if you have a comment or a question or a show idea, ask it any time, but then at the end of the 10-minute mark, I'll read any questions and comments and whatnot for us to discuss, and then we'll do the next segment. So, okay, so here we go.
Yes. Okay, well, the interesting thing about heaven, besides that it's going to be pleasant, is that our ideas about what heaven actually is like are very, very limited. What people generally build up as being a picture of heaven, they take from the book of Revelation. And unfortunately, that city of Jerusalem that's coming down out of the sky or out of heaven is not a picture of what heaven's supposed to be like. Because if you look at Revelation chapter 22, as the New Jerusalem is coming down, it says in chapter 21, verse 9, one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." The bride of the Lamb is not a city. It is the church. It's us. And so what you have there is a metaphorical description, picturesque description of the church. And so the streets paved with gold and the giant gems as doorways and foundations made up of stones with the names of the apostles on it. It's the church. And so that's not really a picture of heaven. And so the bottom line is you have Jesus telling the thief on the cross, "This day you will be with me in paradise." Word paradise is a loan word from, or borrowed word from Persian, and it described a pleasant garden-like environment. The New Testament, you don't really have much about it, just that we will be with God forever. We will be with each other forever. We have everlasting life. We don't really get much in the way of any details. We probably have less information about what heaven's going to be like than what we have about hell, which we talked about last week, because with hell, at least you have the description of Lazarus and the rich man, and the rich man is in hell, and so you get at least some glimpse of what it is like. But I don't really see the Bible, the apostles, when they're preaching, they'll say, "Here's what heaven is like." Or Paul saying, "Here's what heaven is like and what we'll be doing," and no. There's just nothing. And that's deeply frustrating, which is why, again, people, because they have questions that they want answers to, and then the Bible doesn't provide them in any obvious way, will then try to find answers by ignoring context and picking things out to create what the answer that they would like to have.
So the Jehovah's Witnesses don't talk about heaven, but they talk about a new earth where everything is pleasant and wonderful and everybody's happy and everybody's dressed from the 50s. And if you look at the Watchtower, that's what it is. So would you say that view of what the afterlife is more accurate than saying that we'll be in this place on a cloud with gold streets and pearly gates and all that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just very hard to say, because you do have the statements made in the New Testament that there will be a new heavens and a new earth. And of course, even that, then you wonder, okay, does that mean new in the sense that the old has been blown up and is gone and it's all been replaced with a brand new thing? Or does it mean that, like, we have new life in Christ? Or we still are, but we've been transformed? And my guess is, based on that kind of usage, that it's probably thinking more in terms of transformation rather than the universe as we know it vanishes and a brand new one is created. I think it'll be transformed. That we will, that is the way the universe was supposed to be initially when God created it, before Adam and Eve made their poor choices. We return to Eden, essentially. That is, that type of situation would be my guess. And see, this is what's so frustrating. All of this is guesswork. We don't have, okay, this is, here, let's read this section of the Bible that tells us what heaven is like and what's all involved and what we'll be doing, and on and on and on. It does not do that for us. You get, and for instance, one of the things that people will argue and think, based on something that Jesus said, is that we won't procreate in heaven or in the eternal kingdom. The problem with that, though, is that he was answering the question by the Sadducees about whose wife would this poor woman be in the afterlife after she'd had 7 husbands and none of them had had children. And Jesus makes the comment that they'll be like the angels, neither give it in merit, however he phrased it. It doesn't tell you that there's no procreation. It just tells you that the way things work in the afterlife or in the eternal kingdom is different than the way it works now. That is, wives are not property of a given husband in that sense. Exactly what the social construct may be, we don't know. But I don't know that it's telling us that there will be no procreation.
Interesting.
I mean, that's a possibility, but it doesn't say that.
Right.
It just says that the institution of marriage as it was practiced at that point, that's not the way it's going to work.
Well, you kind of don't need the picture of marriage once you're in the eternal kingdom, because the picture of marriage is Christ and his bride, like, coming to the wedding. Like, you don't live your entire married life in your wedding.
No.
So you have the time up to the wedding, you have the wedding and the celebration, and then you go on with your life.
Right.
And so you don't need that picture anymore. So probably be sort of like marriages where of course it's all speculation,
Yes,
but maybe
it is.
it's like marriages where it's just day-to-day life, and this is your husband and this is your family, and you just kind of go on. You don't, you're not throwing bouquets everywhere you go, and you don't every day put your rings on and say your vows. But so maybe there's no need for that picture anymore, and so maybe it's different in that
it'll
respect.
obviously be different, but we don't know how.
Right.
And I think that's part of the issue. That is, we are fallen, broken creatures now. And there, for those of us, once we become Christians, we get a software patch, but the hardware is still not where it needs to be, and the software probably isn't where it needs to be either. And so we don't get it. And I don't know if we can get it. That is, we're told very explicitly by Jesus that the entire Bible is summed up in the command to love your neighbor as yourself, or to do to others as you have them do to you. We have a hard time, even if we grasp that, even putting it into practice at any level whatsoever. And so I just think that our comprehension of what heaven would be like is probably would be really hard for us. Mm-hmm. It just would not make a whole lot of sense. I mean, think in terms of if you took somebody from the Middle Ages and dropped them into a modern city in the West. Mm-hmm. They would have a hard time adapting.
Yeah.
There would just be so many things that they just would not be able to make any sense of whatsoever. Everything from the vehicular traffic, cars, trucks, mm-hmm. buses, trains, aircraft, our electronic media, just everything, plus social mores, the way we mm-hmm. dress, the way we just, everything would be weird. It would smell weird even. Uh-huh. Because, hygiene is so much better, and, we don't have, generally speaking, at least in the Western world, you don't experience body odor very often. Mm-hmm. And yet that would have been, and then the other sorts of issues, it's not running in the streets or whatever. Right. So it's just...
Unless you're in downtown LA.
Yeah. But it's just a completely different environment, completely different social mores, just everything. If you go back, if we were to take you back before about maybe 400 BC, the concept of money itself would have been odd. Mm-hmm. That is, that wouldn't be something they would do because money didn't exist. Just everything would be radically different, let alone the language barriers. But
right. That's
of limited consequence compared to the social mores. And so I think heaven will be that much of a shift for us. Mm-hmm. It would be that hard for us to make sense of. And so we simply aren't given details. We are given the metaphor of what the bride is, but that doesn't really tell us anything about heaven. It just is a metaphorical description of the bride of Christ, triumphant at the end, because the book of Revelation is dealing with the issue of the Roman Empire beating up on the church. Mm-hmm. And so at the end, the church wins and is the bride of Christ. So we are told, the things that we are told biblically is that we will be with God forever. Mm-hmm. There'll be no more tears.
And see, that's the thing where, so my mom and I have had this discussion about there's no more tears, because my mom holds a traditional view of heaven, which until recently I did too. I don't hold any real view of what heaven is going to be like, because the Bible doesn't really tell us when you look closely at it. But we were talking about my dad and having already died, and she made the comment that, well, your dad doesn't really care about what's happening to us right now because he's in heaven and those things are wiped away. And I said, but that doesn't make sense to me of the things I know about God. That God wants a relationship with us. He wants us to have healthy relationships with each other. We're to love God and to love people, and it's really about relationships. So why, when you die, would you forget about your relationships on earth? It doesn't make sense to me. So his view is that because you're taken out of time and space, you are automatically at the resurrection.
Everybody
and
so
everybody,
we get there at the same time.
We all get there at the same time. There is another view that's potentially possible, that when you get to wherever it is you're going, we'll call it heaven for lack of another word, when you get to heaven after you die, it's like you've arrived at Disneyland before the rest of your party, like you're coming in separate cars to Disneyland. And so you've arrived at Disneyland, you've gone through the gate, you have your, we don't need tickets, but you paid your general admission, you have your e-tickets. Yes, Jesus paid the general admission. We have a season pass. And so I've arrived there before the rest of my party has. So I'm anticipating them coming. So it's like, I'm like super happy that I'm at Disneyland and I'm eating ice cream, those Mickey Mouse ice creams, and I'm going on rides and stuff like that, knowing that my party is on their way. And so there's that part too. So you're not like worried about them like, oh, I hope they don't have a flat, or, whatever. I hope they didn't get in a wreck. Although if it gets too late, you start worrying about those things. But analogies only go so far. But so there's kind of those two potential viewpoints for why there's no more tears in heaven, and how that works with your relationships here on earth. Because, like, I know that when someone dies, I feel really super sad being on this side of it. But then why don't they feel super sad? Like, I really miss my family. What, like my dad, speaking from my dad's perspective, because he and my mom were connected at the hip. And so I would think he would miss her. But if he was in a place so awesome, knowing she was coming, he would be like super excited for her to get there. Or we're all there at the same time, so we're already there. She had trouble grasping that, but she doesn't understand science fiction at all, and that whole time-space thing. Although it is hard to conceive of, even if you do watch or read a lot of science fiction. But still, like...
or if you know physics.
Right, which I don't, so I'm not going to go there, but I just take your word for it. But like time travel has always been something that I've found intriguing. And I don't read like general science fiction stuff, but I enjoy time travel stories. And so I kind of get the idea of...
It's like the show Timeless.
Being bound by... Well, when I was a kid, I read a book. I did manage to figure out what the title of the book was, and I bought a copy of it, and I have it at home. But it was a scholastic book, and it was about these kids that lived in New York, and they got on a subway and ended up in New Amsterdam, which is what New York used to be called. And and then they have like these adventures and stuff. So time travel is something that's always interested me, but I wasn't like a science fiction reader. Anyway, so I kind of understand how things could be outside space and time. And I think it was last week I told the story about the painting in the business office at the college.
Well, you have recently. I'm not sure if it was last week.
Yeah, but kind of being outside the painting, being the creator of the painting, and knowing everything that's happening in the painting, but then being a person in the painting and how you're stuck in that place.
Right.
That's kind of, that's my conception of what time is, for like God's relationship to time. So anyway, all that to say that, that I don't think that people die, go to heaven, and they just forget about everybody that was here, and that they're just like there.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, part of it too is that phrase, there'll be no more tears. The point of it is, again, more metaphorical than literal. The idea the eternal kingdom, as it will be, lacks the things that cause sadness in the current world. That is, there will be no more death. That would be the big one. And so that's more the point, not just that you might not ever cry, just that it's an entirely different sort of environment. Now, having said that there is nothing in the Bible about the eternal kingdom, there is one thing that is interesting. If you look at the book of Ezekiel, starting at...
Now, I will say while you're looking for that, your presupposition is that Revelation is not talking about the end of time as we know it.
Well, it's really it's not primarily focused on that. That is, it does give you the ending of things, but its primary focus is on the problems that the church was experiencing with the Roman Empire and the persecutions and everything that was going on. And so the picture of the book, and this is common for apocalyptic literature, which Revelation is the only biblical example we have of it, but there are a bunch of these things written during that same general period of time, and the imagery is quite clear that, the beast is the Roman Empire, the horror of Babylon is the city of Rome, and so on. The mark of the beast is the imperial seal. So all these things from our perspective now are past tense. At the
So
time,
it's not the COVID vaccine with the
no, at
chip
the time
that
it
Bill
was
Gates is
being
putting
written.
in it?
At the time John was writing it, it was prophetic. It was talking about
Right.
things that were going to happen. But just like with any of the prophecies that one of the key things with prophecy is that you pay attention to prophet if what he says comes to pass. Well, if what he says is not going to come to pass for 2,000 or more years, a lot of good that does you, knowing whether or not this person is a prophet. If you look at Isaiah, Jeremiah, any of the prophets of the Old Testament, they gave prophecies that were fulfilled in fairly short order. And so why should we think Revelation would be any different than that? Plus, again, it's the type of literature it is, apocalyptic. It's pretty obvious what's going on. Most biblical scholars would argue no differently than I am about what the book of Revelation is about. But anyway, one of the things that's interesting, if you're familiar with the book of Ezekiel, in chapters 38 or 39, you have talk about the battle of Gog and Magog. The only other place that that's mentioned is in the book of Revelation, and that comes after Jesus has come and tossed everybody. It's the very end thing. And that raises intriguing questions or points of comparison between Revelation and Ezekiel. As you have the Battle of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel, and then you have after that a description of how Israel is restored. And you have, a new city of Jerusalem built, and everything's laid out nice and pretty. And you have a river that flows that has trees on either side that people can be healed from the leaves or the fruit of it. And if you look at the book of Revelation from about chapter 20 on, you have the ending of Ezekiel in a very compressed format there. And that portion of Revelation does seem to point to the eternal state. That is, when everything has been restored, everything is perfect, everything is wonderful. And so also likewise the ending of the book of Ezekiel. And so if you want to know what heaven's like, potentially, you could look at the ending of the book of Ezekiel where it lays things out. And it's a picture different than what most people would have regarding the nature of eternity. Because you see people, you have fishermen going out and fishing, you have people raising children, you've got people going to work. It's essentially a restored Eden. Which is not the picture that we generally have of heaven. We tend to think that heaven will be, we won't have to get up in the morning and go to work anymore. That would be heaven.
Yes.
It would also be very boring eventually. Vacations are nice, but eventually you can't keep on doing that. And so, again, it's speculation because it's hard to say for sure that you can make the connection between the end of the book of Ezekiel and the end of the book of Revelation. And Revelation has its own set of difficulties time-wise of things. But it does suggest a possibility. And so if you want to know what heaven is like, at least in broad outline, it seems very much like the way things are now, minus the bad stuff. That is, you'll still have a job, you'll still go to work, you'll still make a living. You'll have children. There'll be life. And we seem to be comfortable with that existence. Sometimes people will talk about, well, how would it be if things just go on and on forever and it never ends? Wouldn't you get bored eventually? Wouldn't it drive you nuts? It's just no ending. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. I don't think you find very many old people as they're approaching their deaths thinking or talking about how, I'm bored now, so might as well go. It just doesn't happen. We tend not to really get bored. We find things to keep ourselves occupied. And the universe is a very big place, and there's an awful lot of things to do. It'd take an awful lot of time to fully experience every possible thing, and plus we do a lot of the same things over and over again. That is, we have probably eaten quite a number of pizzas and hot dogs and hamburgers over the years.
We're watching the same movie more than once. People
we're reading the same book.
Right.
That is, we do seem to enjoy doing a lot of the same things. That is, we like some variety. That is, you don't want to eat hamburger
routine.
every single day or pizza every single. Well, I might, but you go from one thing to another, but you keep coming back to the same cycle of foods.
Right.
You don't really get bored with it. Is how many Cokes or Pepsis have you drunk in a year in your lifetime, or beer or whiskey or whatever it is that you're drinking, tea?
So the whole thing about immortality and stuff like
Yes.
that. Immortality in this life would not be a good thing.
No, because of all the bad things that happen.
Well, not just that, but it's like when you own dogs. Dogs don't live as long as humans. So in your lifetime, you've said goodbye to several pets.
Right. No.
And it's sad and it hurts and it's hard. And but if everyone was immortal, that wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
So, and like when old people get really, really old and really, really sickly, they will wish that they could go, like, why is God keeping me here?
Because everybody they've known may
Is
be
gone, and they're in physical pain, and their abilities are limited.
Right.
Excuse
but
me. But if that wasn't a problem,
why would you want it to go?
Right. So that's what eternity would be like, where you're not infirmed with old age, and your loved ones aren't dying off, and your pets aren't dying off, and things like that. So,
and everything is operating on the principle of loving your neighbor as yourself and doing for others you'd have them do for you. And so you're always pretty cheerful.
Right.
Because everything is always a positive rather than, people getting mad and misunderstanding and yelling and screaming. And
Psychologists will be out of work.
Yeah.
So they'll have to find something else to do.
I mean, they might still do it from the standpoint of just studying how it all works. But yeah, things will change.
Yeah.
That is, there'll be some things that we won't have to worry about anymore.
Right.
Other things that we will. Keep in mind that work and struggles and that sort of thing are probably an ongoing thing. That is, if you look again at the Garden of Eden, they were to tend the garden, which would suggest that things are not going exactly perfectly. That they have to make an effort to get things to work properly. You'd have to trim the trees and whatever. I suspect that entropy would still be an issue, and so there will still probably be plumbing. Just nothing lasts forever except us, because that is, generally speaking, biological systems are self-repairing. That is, you cut your hand, it fixes itself. What doesn't fix are the issues associated with aging.
But that would be resolved in the resurrection.
In the resurrection, of course, it would have been resolved. That is, it wouldn't have happened to us outside of Adam and Eve making the poor choice and being excluded from getting a hold of the tree of life, which would suggest that potentially, at least, there'd be a way of fixing it. Even so, now.
So what about
redemption
animals?
Has happened. Well, animals we don't know a whole lot about. Again, we can speculate. One of the things that's interesting to point out is that the words, they're translated as spirit and soul, are also applied to animals. But the bottom line is we don't know.
I figure
because you can't see it. It's like this always bothers people, but we really don't know how God works with people that are too young to understand anything. That is, what happens to a baby that dies. we assume that God takes care of it in a proper and decent way, but we really don't know what's involved. You have a theological position called age of accountability, but it's really a kludge that, from a theological standpoint, is a disaster. Because essentially, the age of accountability argues that you're going to heaven until you commit the unpardonable sin of turning 4. And that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. And then for different people, it'll be different ages too, because of brain development. I mean, I would argue that with like our girls, the difference in brain development between the 2 older ones and the youngest one was really significant. So
it's just something that
Right.
God doesn't bother to tell us about. Again, primarily because it's not something we can do anything about.
Right.
Is you can't evangelize animals. You can't do anything about their eternal condition.
We brought Oreo to church, and Snicker went to church once, so there you go.
So, but we don't know. It's same issue with potential sentient beings beyond Earth, that is, aliens throughout the universe. Again, there's nothing we can do to reach them or evangelize them or whatever,
Right.
and so the Bible doesn't talk about it. Now, you'll have
Right.
some Christians that, because of that, think that there couldn't possibly be any aliens, and I would say your God's too small. The universe is an awfully big place, and that's an awful lot of real estate to go to waste if there's nothing there.
Right. And God may have his own agreement with other planets.
Yeah, that is, one would assume that if the sentient beings on other planets make the same poor choice that we have, that God would provide the same sort of fix that he has provided for us. I've suggested numerous times that should we ever contact extraterrestrial beings, that there will probably be a new discipline that will come into play eventually as we get to know them better, which would be comparative Christianity. That is, how it worked on their world versus how it worked here. But one would expect it to be something similar. But again, all these things are speculative because we don't know. And some people are very uncomfortable with not having definitive answers for absolutely everything. And we need to, I don't know, I enjoy not knowing everything because that gives me something to do.
Well, and I think it's important too. We often make comparisons between the way we treat our children to the way that God treats us. And when you're little, your parents don't tell you about things. They don't tell you that they're having trouble paying the mortgage because there's nothing you can do about it. And so, and there are parents that do share that with their kids, and they should not.
Right. It doesn't go
Strife
well,
between the parents because there's nothing the kid can do about
causes
it.
undue stress.
Right, and it's adult information, not child information. So, and I think that God, well, I know God understands that, and so he doesn't. There's nothing we can do to change it. So, you know, you can believe what you want, like kind of like believing in Santa and the Easter Bunny and things like that. Whether Santa or the Easter Bunny really exists or not is kind of immaterial to the child because, you know, we just kind of let them believe what they want to believe until I believe you need to tell kids the truth because you can't see this one thing that my mom and I agree on. You don't see God. You don't see Santa. So if I tell you, oh, Santa's real, Santa's real, Santa's real. By the way, take your kids out of the room for this part. If you still perpetuate the idea that there really is a Santa. But anyway, spoiler alert. But I didn't want my children to say, well, you told me that Santa was real, now you're telling me he's not real. You told me that God is real, but why isn't God not real like Santa's not real? So I didn't want to have that problem. The issue we did run into is that one of our children took it upon herself to evangelize the other children in the church nursery that Santa was not real. And I was in hot water with one of the moms who really wanted her child to believe that. So she and I spoke, and I told her, I said, Tony was informed, not, I just ratted her out. Tony was informed, not
people
that
that
it
know
wasn't
our
her
children
job.
would know which one
Yes.
it was.
Tony was, all three of our girls were told, you don't
Right.
share this information with other children because their parents still want them to believe in Santa. And what I taught them to say was, like, if kids said, do you believe in Santa? You can say yes, because there was a St. Nicholas. That story is true. So when in your brain, you can say Santa, St. Nicholas, yes, I believe in Santa.
And Santa Claus as a fictional character actually exists as a fictional
Right.
character.
So you can,
It's like asking, is Harry Potter real? Well, there's the movies and the books, and he's a character and all of that, and you can discuss him. But so far as real in the sense
Right.
of you can go meet him over at the corner, I mean, you could meet the actor, but...
Right. So Tony has always been the arbiter of truth in our family. And so she took it upon herself to tell the other children that Santa wasn't real. And it's interesting in school because I have third graders. So some still believe in Santa, some don't. And I'll have kids that go, you know, Santa's not real. And I'm like, that is so not your job. So just mute your microphone right now, because right now we're in distance learning. Not your job. And if they want to know about Santa, they can talk to their parents, just like the other things we don't talk to kids about. Ask your parents.
Yep.
And kids will say to me, do you believe in Santa? And I say, of course. Because there was a St. Nicholas. I believe in that there's a fictional character named Santa. So yeah, I believe in Santa. And but it's always a sticky wicket when dealing with that issue with kids, especially
Right.
at the age group that I have, because some do believe and some don't. So
Yeah.
but and then they'll ask me questions like leaning towards, well, should I still believe in Santa? And I say, you talk to your parents about that. Same thing about God. If they ask me if I believe in God, I say yes. But then if they ask me questions about God, I will tell them, you talk to your adult about that. And I don't call them parents anymore because we have a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren as their children, and we have a lot of kids in foster care. So you ask your adult, because everybody has an adult.
Yes.
So not everybody has a mom or a dad or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah. Which is sad.
Yes. It's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. So we have to
so we make adjustments
and
accordingly.
accommodations. Yeah.
So, yeah. What makes theology fun, at least from my perspective, is to recognize that theology is more a matter of asking questions and examining questions than it is providing definitive answers. That is, there are small things, or there's some things you can provide definitive answers on, but there's a wide range of things for which no definitive answer is available.
But it boils down to the purpose of Scripture and the point of the Bible. The point of the Bible is to love God and to love people.
Right.
And so if it's outside of that, there's not
There's
not a whole lot. Yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot of other information.
Because that bottom line is something we can at least comprehend, even if we can't always do it. At least we understand the ideal. And of course, what brings us closer to the ideal is being in Christ. That is, Jesus came, died for us, and solved that issue between us and him, and it also helps resolve the issues between one another. But we're still in a fallen condition. We're still imperfect and not going to be able to do it that well. But that's what we have the capability of doing something about, and so that's what the Bible focused on. We have nothing, that is, what heaven is going to be like, we really don't need to know any more than we need to know when Jesus is going to come back. In fact, it's better if we don't, because if we knew he wasn't going to come back until 11,034 AD, yeah, it would have negative effects on
Good example. So when I wasn't allowed to watch Saturday Night Live when I lived at home, my parents didn't approve of it. But they would go out with, they'd go out on dates and stuff, and I knew they'd be back extremely late. And my brother and sister would go to bed, and I would be sitting like right in front of the TV. I'd watch Saturday Night Live, and I was ready to hear the car to switch the channel. I had to be really close to the TV so I could switch channel. The other thing I used to do, I think my mother's still watching. There's 2 viewers.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's Dennis and Steve or if it's my mom and Steve. But anyway, so the other thing I used to do, because I really liked the Hardy Boys, I was in love with Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson. But the problem was the Hardy Boys was on during Sunday night church. So sometimes I would pretend to be sick, and I would I'm really tired, I don't feel good, I think I need to sleep. And so the entire house was dark, because my parents were like, if you're going to miss church, you have to be in bed asleep. So the entire house was dark except the TV was on, and I would have it turned down enough. It was the most uncomfortable way to watch a TV show. I couldn't just relax and watch it. I had to, because I thought for sure they would come in and find me watching the Hardy Boys, and that's why you stayed home from church, you heathen. So I would watch the Hardy Boys. I didn't get to see very many episodes because it was before VCRs and DVRs and all that stuff that makes your life amazing, where you can, like, people ask me, so what day, when is that TV show on? It's like, I don't know, it's on my DVR, I just watch it. So but the TV schedule used to be a really important thing, and so I would play sick, and I would try it periodically. It didn't always work, and I wouldn't push it too far. I had to really make it seem authentic, because I really wanted to just stay home and watch the Hardy Boys. I really didn't want to go to Sunday night church.
Human beings are devious.
We are, yes. But, but I would sit right close to the TV. I have it turned way down so I could hear if the car was coming. And then that way I could just shut it off and run to bed. But they never came home while I was watching it. So,
you won.
Yeah, I won. But like Hardy Boys was on, I don't remember if it was a half an hour or an hour. I know Nancy Drew came on like right before or right after. But I don't remember if it was half an hour or an hour. But I always thought, because my mom raised me on that verse, be sure that your sins shall find you out. And that was weird. My watch went off at the same time that notification did. It freaked me out a little bit. Yeah. But, so I was sure, Dennis goes, me, he's here.
Oh.
So, anyway, so my mom raised me on that verse, be sure that your sins shall find you out. So I always thought for sure I would get caught. And so I had to be super sneaky to be able to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, and I was doing horrible things like watching Hardy Boys and lusting after Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson and watching Saturday Night Live, which was, really trashy.
Yes.
It was funny.
Yeah.
And it was the old Saturday Night Live, the really good one.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it used to be funny.
And Chevy Chase and Gilda Radner and Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it a lot.
Okay. So, what we know about heaven, hardly anything. We know it'll last a long time, and we know it'll be a place that's pleasant and without tears. It's described as paradise by Jesus on the cross. If we go by what we have from Ezekiel chapter 40 or so through the end, it's essentially a restored Eden, but people still have jobs and things that they have to do.
We'll be naked. You have to go to work naked.
It doesn't say that.
Well, they were naked in Eden.
True, so it's possible.
So
Depend on what part. Of course, if you have the same climate variations in the future Earth, there'd be places where you wouldn't want to be naked.
yes,
The Arctic would be unpleasant.
yeah. But if it's all like Eden,
Actually, even Minneapolis would be bad in the wintertime.
yes.
So. Everybody will congregate around the equator.
Of course, Lancaster is rough in the winter too.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a place you want to be naked.
Yeah, no. In the summertime, it would be nice because it's just freaking hot
Yeah,
here.
you'd still want shoes, though,
Yes.
because it'd be nasty.
Blister your feet.
Yeah, blister your feet.
Yeah, I learned that really quick when we moved to like Havasu. Because, like, you know, when we lived in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in the summertime, kids were barefoot all the time. That's how you got stung by bees on your feet. You would step on them. And we, like, hardly ever wore shoes in the summertime. But, man, like Havasu, because, well, the day we moved in, it was like around 120 degrees. It was really flipping hot. And so that if you walked in heels on the blacktop, your heels would sink into the blacktop because it was so hot that the tar would be really soft, and the slurry seal that they would use to seal cracks, that would really melt pretty fast. But even the cement was really, really hot. So yeah, I learned real fast you couldn't go outside in the heat, and I can sometimes quickly go outside barefoot. In the summer here, we have a brick walkway to our driveway. If I think I can make it to the grass, I'll do it because I really like to be barefoot. But yeah, I haven't been solidly barefoot since I lived back east, which was a long time
And see,
ago.
this is another area of speculation regarding eternity. That is, pain, as we experience it, is a useful thing. That is,
Right.
those people that, for whatever reason, can't feel pain, they have a lot of problems in life because
Right.
they don't know that they're doing things that can cause damage to their body. And so the question would be, that is, had Adam and Eve not fallen or in the eternal state, how is that going to work? That is, say you decide that you want to do some rock climbing for the fun of it. What if you fall off the mountain? What are the consequences of that in a body
Well,
that
you
can't
said there were
die?
those trees that healed, the leaves healed people. You would just take leaves with you.
And see, that's the interesting thing. That is, why do the nations need healing if...
Because you can't feel pain, so like, oh crap, I just ripped my thumb off again. I need to go over to the thumb tree and get a new thumb.
Yes. Or what if you are an astronaut and you forgot to put your spacesuit on before you...
Well, then you're a stupid astronaut. Then you
You're
deserve to
stupid.
die.
But you can't die, so you're just uncomfortable for a while until they notice you.
Is that an asteroid? No, it's Bill. Re-entering the atmosphere naked.
That's gotta suck.
So you're thinking to yourself, so Bill's thinking to himself, okay, this is going to suck for a few minutes, but then I'll be
Then it'll
fine.
stop, but the stopping's gonna suck too. Oh dear. Yeah, what will eternity be like?
For some people, it'll be harder than for others.
Will clumsiness go away?
Unlikely. He tripped over a curb yesterday. We were walking to get food, and it was a high curb, I will give you that, but it was painted red. I stepped up just fine. Hello, I was right next to you, and I'm shorter, so it was a higher step for me
Yeah.
than it was for you. I stepped right up, clunk, and he's like, oops.
Did I hurt myself?
No, because you never do. If I do,
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's only because God is gracious.
Just because
He likes you.
Just because it looks funny doesn't... Who cares?
And then we're walking the dog, and he falls off the curb.
And do I hurt myself?
No, but you look stupid.
Then
And it irritates me because he's
irritates
so
her,
smart.
yes.
Like, you are so smart, and seriously, you can't walk on a sidewalk.
No, I can walk on the sidewalk
And you
for
fall
short
off.
distances.
Like, he needs, like, bumpers, like those bowling bumpers, but he needs them
Well,
to pop up. So
My
he doesn't-
dad pointed this out to me on more than one occasion, that, watching me walk down the hallway at the house was weird because it's like it's bouncing off the walls going down the way.
And most of us just walk down a hallway and we don't damage ourselves
Apparently,
or the walls.
I was unaware of the fact that I did that, but I can believe it. Based
Oh,
on your
I believe it.
reactions.
Yes, I believe it because I've lived with this for 38 years.
Yeah.
So,
well,
is it 38?
anyway.
Almost 38, yeah.
Oh,
That's
so
a long time to be falling off curbs.
1983
Yeah,
till now.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of...
38 years.
Think of all the joy that I provided for you, though.
The frustration.
People like slapstick comedy.
Like Learn to Walk.
Do you think this is going to
No.
change anytime soon?
No.
I'm getting old.
Unlikely.
It's likely to get worse.
Unlikely.
Anyway, have we gotten any questions from anybody?
Nope.
Interesting.
They seem very content with the topic.
Okay, well, that's
We seem to have
fine.
answered all their questions and covered all of the bases.
Well, then let's do a little ad then. This book is available. If you want to see my speculations on heaven and hell, there's a book for it. Sky Shore.
Okay.
Okay.
You get it in Kindle.
Or
in
paperback.
Yep, paperback.
And then this book is also available, which has nothing to do with heaven or hell, but it does have to do with time travel. So anyway, that's also available now.
We should probably create a little window that can pop up instead of just blocking us
Well, people can hear us still.
and showing your entire Amazon page.
Well, whatever. There we are.
This is so, did you forget to put the banner up all this time?
Yes, I did forget to put the banner up. So,
That's okay. I forgot to put the banner up during one of your sermons too, so
Yeah.
it's all good. We're even.
So, but free advertising to all our 2 or 3 viewers.
Yes. So, is that
So,
everything?
Yeah, that pretty much covers everything because, like I said, there's not a whole lot to talk about regarding heaven. Beyond the fact that we have questions and lack answers, and so all we can do is speculate in interesting ways. One of the things that we do know as a certainty about heaven is that eating is a part of it.
Yay, donuts.
Of course, then that raises the question as to what would happen if you didn't eat. Mm-hmm. That is, in the real world, you'd starve to death, you'd die. But
In the real world, like that's not going to be real.
But in heaven, an eternal kingdom, you wouldn't. But then, of course, why would you stop eating?
And if you don't have pain, you wouldn't be like.
But you would
Like
have.
super hungry.
I suspect you would have pain because, from a practical standpoint, it would be hard. You have problems without pain. Pain
Well,
is a
I
very
think that
useful
you
thing.
won't have. I don't think you'll have like the people that don't eat, like that have bulimia, that have anorexia. It's a psychological disorder.
Yeah, the software problem.
And yeah, you won't have that issue. So probably everyone will eat when they're hungry. And I'm hoping there's donuts.
Why wouldn't there be?
Well, because if it's all healthy food.
What's wrong with donuts?
I know, right? Well, they make me fat. So if I'm going to be naked for eternity, I need those donuts not to make me fat. Just putting that out there.
Yes.
So, because this would not, I don't care how nice heaven is and how everybody's kind to each other, they're going to walk away going, that girl needs some clothes. You can't be looking at that every day. I would have like no friends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Will we wear clothing in heaven?
Yeah,
I don't know.
little fig leaf.
Yeah.
Little fig leaves.
Um,
Some of us will need banana leaves, but yeah.
yeah. Apparently we'll eat fish, so at least.
I won't be allergic anymore.
So
How do you know we'll eat fish?
Because, well, again, it's speculation.
Okay.
But based on what you see at the end of Ezekiel, you have people going out and catching fish.
You never did like actually read that. Is it long?
Ezekiel, it's like several chapters of Ezekiel.
Oh, that covers the end of it? Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be kind of cumbersome to
Yeah.
read
Well, you were
through it
like
all.
looking, and so I thought there was
I just
a
wanted
passage
to, I just
read.
wanted to make sure I got to the right chapter. So if
Okay.
people want to, on their own, read from chapter 40 through the end,
Okay.
and then compare that to Revelation 20 through the end.
Okay.
And
So that's your homework.
And remember that chapter 40.
Steve put up a picture of a donut.
Yeah, and remember that chapter 40 of Ezekiel comes right after chapters 38 and 39, which is the Gog and Magog incident. And so at the end of the book of Revelation, you have the Gog and Magog incident, and then the description that is a condensed version, I would argue, of what you have in chapter 40 through the end of Ezekiel. So something to take a look at. But it is speculative. it's easy to speculate on both. What I find interesting is hardly anybody reads Ezekiel 40 through the end, and not that many people read Revelation either. So
I go through it once a year, but I don't always attend to it, like not studying it, but I'm around Jews, so I get enough of that.
Yeah. And of course, if you do read through the Bible every year, over a number of years, eventually you pick it all up.
Right.
So
I would like to clarify with Steve that chocolate donuts are gross, like the chocolate on top of donuts. That's gross.
I like chocolate donuts.
Well, you can't walk on a sidewalk, so your opinion doesn't matter. Dunkin' Donuts white cream filleds. That's, although I have to say vanilla cream, because that's what they're called, like when I order them. But I'm off sugar for a while till my doctor's appointment sometime in March or April. So, just, yeah. But no, chocolate-covered donuts, chocolate doesn't belong on it. And it's not even good chocolate they put on. It's like thin. It's like not a good, rich chocolate. Sorry.
Depends. Some are better than others, I will
So
admit,
Dunkin'
but
Donuts is fine. Krispy Kreme's in a pinch. Sweetie Pies is a place here in Lancaster that is, they've got really good donuts. But I like Dunkin' better than Krispy Kreme because their donuts are thicker. And Krispy Kreme like glazes like pretty much all their donuts.
I like glazed donuts.
And well, I like glazed donuts too, but I prefer the vanilla cream filleds at Dunkin' because they're thicker. But then you don't have the glaze with it, and I prefer the powder with the. I mean, I will eat them. Don't get me wrong. I will eat a Krispy Kreme vanilla cream donut. I will eat a Dunkin' vanilla cream donut.
Apparently,
I didn't get this body by not eating donuts.
Apparently, the good place will have lots of donut places.
For me.
For you.
Frozen yogurt for other people.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Steve says I'll remember that.
Yes.
Okay, so next week, remember, we won't be here, but we will be back the following Saturday. A donut bikini. Oh my gosh. Now you're talking, Dennis. A donut bikini. There you go. If I could eat donuts and wear a bikini, that would be an awesome thing. So, anyway, we won't be here next Saturday, but we will be back the following Saturday with What About Purgatory?
Yes.
So, and that stems from a question that I had about and we get into that too about our Bible and stuff, because that was a discussion that I witnessed on Facebook, did not participate, that Protestants don't accept the apocryphal books because we don't want to believe in that stuff. We pick and choose what we want to believe.
Yeah, and
which is the first time I've ever heard that. I've never heard that about Protestants. I never heard anything said about us about why we don't accept the apocryphal books.
But that statement that we're picking and choosing is historically misinformed and theologically misinformed.
Really? There are people on Facebook that are historically and theologically misinformed?
Yes.
Wow, I'm shocked. I thought everybody on Facebook was an expert.
And even Catholic theologians wouldn't put it like that. So
okay.
There are substantive reasons for the differences.
Yes. So join us in 2 weeks. No donuts and no donut bikinis, but join us for more Bible talk. And we will actually cover any topic you want. If you want to talk about science fiction, if you want to talk about physics, if you want to talk about...
Yeah, eventually we'll be doing an episode on Tipler and physics of immortality and all of that.
That'll be fun.
Yep.
So, and don't worry if you don't understand the topic, because most of the topics that we talk about, I have no comprehension of anything about them. He's the well-read one, and I just follow along. So, and I ask questions for you guys because I don't understand
And
either.
again, this is unbridled inquiry, not all the answers.
Yes. So, anyway, you guys have a good one.